Hello everybody, we're going to hit you up with another presidential election. This one, the election of 1868. The Civil War is over. Reconstruction is in full swing. All new candidates for the Democrats and the Republicans. Who's going to get it done? Let's find that out right now. Now, as always, we're going to start off with the incumbent party, and that is the Democratic Party. What? Well, let me explain. Abraham Lincoln elected to a second term in 1864 under a National Union Party ticket, but he doesn't last very long. In his second term, April 14, 1865, Lincoln is shot by Confederate sympathizer and actor John Wilkes Booth in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., while the Lincolns were watching a play called Our American Cousin. Lincoln dies the next morning at the Peterson House, and this elevates his vice president, Democrat Andrew Johnson, to the presidency. And his presidency does not go well, especially after Congress returns from its recess and takes over the running of Reconstruction. Johnson and Congress are always clashing, and this became a pattern for the next 4 years or so. Bill passes Congress, Johnson vetoes it, goes back to Congress, Congress overrides the veto. And one big piece of legislation that was passed during Johnson's presidency, and that was the Tenure of Office Act. This require the president to get congressional approval before firing a cabinet member. And this put Johnson into a whole lot of trouble. This got him into a lot of trouble because when he decided to give Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War, the axe, Congress is not too happy about it. So the House impeaches President Johnson for violating the Tenure of Office Act, the first time ever up to this point that a president has been impeached. And although he is impeached by the House and goes to trial in the Senate, he misses being convicted by 1 vote. But and this ends up crippling his presidency, although he gets to keep his office, and he's also pretty much unpopular. So the Democrats do not look at him for a full term. So the Democrats instead are going to go with Horatio Seymour of New York as their presidential candidate. He is actually the chairman of the Democratic National Convention, and he initially declines the nomination, but he ends up accepting it anyway. He's going to bring along for the ride Francis P. Blair of Missouri as his running mate. The Democrats are going to pass a platform that condemned quote-unquote Negro supremacy. Sorry if that's offensive to anybody, but just reading it from what I have here, and demanded a restoration of states' rights, including the right of southern states to determine for themselves whether to allow suffrage for adult free men. So their platform going back to one of their principles, and that is states' rights. Now that we have our Democratic ticket, let's get to the Republicans. Now, by the time 1868 rolls around, the Republicans feel like that they were strong enough to drop the Union Party label, but they wanted to nominate a popular hero for their presidential candidate. The Democratic Party was in control of many large northern states that had a great percentage of the electoral votes. So they're going to end up going with Ulysses S. Grant of Illinois as their presidential nominee. Grant, the commanding general of the Union Army in the final part of the Civil War, and is also the acting Secretary of War after the firing of Edwin Stanton. Grant's going to bring along for the ride the Speaker of the House, Schuyler Colfax of Indiana. Now, the Republicans, they're going to pass a platform that supports black suffrage in the South as part of the passage to full citizenship for former slaves. It agreed to let northern states, though, decide individually whether to enfranchise blacks. It also opposed using greenbacks to redeem U.S. bonds. Greenbacks are this form of paper money that the government had to print out so they can keep on funding the Civil War. Encouraged immigration, endorsed full rights for naturalized citizens, and favored radical Reconstruction as distinct from the mere lenient policy of President Andrew Johnson. Both Lincoln and Johnson wanted leniency when it came to dealing with the defeated South, while the radical Republicans wanted punishment for the South. Now that we have our Republican ticket, let's get into the campaign. Now, this campaign was conducted pretty vigorously, but the Republicans were fearful as late as October, so just days before the election, that they may be beaten. Grant himself, he took no part in the campaign, and he made no promises. But the Republican campaign theme, which actually came from his acceptance speech when he received the nomination, "Let us have peace," resonated with the American people. After 4 years of civil war, 3 years of wrangling over Reconstruction, and the attempted impeachment of the president, the nation craved the peace Grant pledged to achieve. Now, Seymour, he wasn't able to answer none of the charges made against him, but he did make a few key speeches. Some newspapers exaggerated his faults. As the governor of New York, Seymour sent troops to Gettysburg, with some press tried to portray him as disloyal to the Union. The New York Tribune led the cartoon campaign with a picture of Seymour standing on the steps of the City Hall, calling a mob of New York draft riders "my friends." The Hartford Post called him almost as much of a corpse as ex-President James Buchanan, who had just died in 1868. Additionally, Republicans alleged that insanity ran through the Seymour family, citing as evidence the suicide of his father. Meanwhile, Seymour's running mate, Francis P. Blair, went on a national speaking tour in which he framed the contest with Ulysses Grant and the pro-Reconstruction Republicans in stark racial terms, warning of the rule of a semi-barbarous race of blacks who are worshippers of fetishes and polygamists, and wanted to subject the white women to their unbridled lust. Now, Republicans advised Americans, meanwhile, not to vote for Seymour, as Blair might succeed him. Now, Blair, he had a reputation for being outspoken as a politician, and his campaign speeches in this election attacked radical Republicans. Samuel J. Tilden, who would run as the Democratic nominee in 1876, in just a couple of videos from now, asked Blair to confine his campaigning to Missouri and Illinois for fear he would hurt the ticket because of his stand on Reconstruction. Now, up to this point, Seymour himself hadn't taken an active role in the campaign. And after this, he went into the canvass seeking to steer the campaign away from the harshness of Blair's attacks on radical Reconstruction. He emphasized his idea that change in the South should be accomplished at the state level without national interference. So once again, harking back to that democratic principle of states' rights. He also believed that state civil authority should take precedence over military action, and the president and the Supreme Court should be respected rather than attacked, as he claimed that the Republicans had done. The Democrats would be careful to reorder national priorities, but will this late effort at campaigning work? Let's find out in the results right now. Unfortunately for Horatio Seymour, it does not work. It is going to be an electoral drubbing for the Republican Party. Grant's going to be elected president, 214 electoral votes to only 80 for Mr. Seymour. Grant's going to carry 26 states, while Seymour only carries 8. But the popular vote, a little bit closer. 52.7% for General Grant and 47.3% for Mr. Seymour. Now, this is the first election in which African Americans could vote in every northern or reconstructed southern state in accordance with the first Reconstruction Act. And the reason why I say reconstructed southern state, because Texas, Mississippi, and Virginia had not yet been readmitted into the Union in the 1868 election, so they would not be able to partake in the election proceedings. Grant not only benefited from votes among the newly enfranchised freedmen in the South, but he also pretty much appealed to the North, where the Republicans are dominant. And this was helped in the South. This helped Republican margins in the South, the enfranchisement of African Americans, because for a time, many Southern whites were politically disenfranchised because of their support for the Confederacy during the Civil War. But at the end of the day, it is going to be Grant winning the presidency, and the Republicans are back in the White House. Grant's going to go for a second term in the election of 1872. Can he get it done? We'll find that out next time. And with that, this concludes the review of the election of 1868. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, go ahead and watch those if you want. And with that, we will see you next time.